Robbie Jade Lew. Is she cheating at poker or is she just very, very lucky? We're about to find out. It's a wild ride in words in this video. This is the Never a Truer Word channel, where we look at the words that people choose to use and we try and get behind what it is that they're saying. This channel has been about true crime quite a lot, but in the last week we've had alleged cheating in chess, we've had rule breaking in F1, and now poker. So it looks like sports and games are going to keep us in business. Robbi Jade Lew, poker player who has been accused of cheating in a big stakes game. She denies this. Now, I don't know poker very well, but that's not important because what this channel does, what we do in the videos, as we look at the words that people say and the words that she has chosen to use, they'll be deliberate, whether she is picking them because she wants to give us a certain impression or whether subconsciously it's the words that her brain feels best suit this situation. We're going to look at her interview that she gave to a podcast, which is linked in the description below. To people new to the channel, we analyze the words that people use, only the words. We don't look at the story behind it. We don't look at really logic. And we ask, why has she chosen those words? What's going on? Is she being truthful or is she hiding things? Is she misdirecting us with her words? And we'll also look at what's important to her. What are Robbie's priorities? Let's get into it because there is a lot to look at. So the first thing, the question, on the bit that we're going to look at anyway, the first thing the host does is say, let's talk about the hand here. So we're going to look at her answers around the hand in question that she has been accused of cheating in, and she denies it. So the host sets up the hand and then says, you look down at the Jack of Clubs, Four of Hearts. Now that's not a very premium hand. What led you to deciding to put the additional 2,200 to defend? And Robbie's answer is because we were heads up, or maybe hands up, but I think heads up, and that was the absolute only reason. So it's almost like protecting your blind or protecting the straddle type of thing. And I thought, let me see the flop. And really, I should have folded it right there. That was an automatic fold. Normally I would, and I just decided for whatever reason, and I do this oftentimes, not every hand is a hand that I play properly. There's often times when I'm like, oh my gosh, Ross is going to be so mad that I'm calling right now. And I call, you know what I mean? Like I surprise myself at times. I literally just feel it. And in that very moment, I was like, yeah, I'm going to call and see what the flop is. Now, she's going to claim later on in this interview, and she's claimed a lot, that she thought she was playing with the Jack and a 3, not the Jack and the 4 that she actually had. And the host says to her, you look down at the Jack of Clubs and 4 of Hearts, and nowhere in this does she deal with the fact she thought she had a Jack and a 3. And that's, so when she talks about the decisions she made, she was making those decisions based on thinking she had a Jack and a 3. She brings it up a lot later, but when the host tells her, you look down at the Jack of Clubs and 4 of Hearts, she doesn't take that opportunity to go, yeah, I did, but I thought I had the Jack of Clubs and 3, or I wish I'd looked down at them properly because I played the rest of the hand thinking that I had the Jack of Clubs and a 3. She doesn't take that on at all. She doesn't mention it here. She lays out her reasoning for what she did, but she doesn't say her reasoning was also based on her thinking she had different cards. She says that it's almost like protecting your blind. So almost like means it's not like, it's not exactly. So it's almost like protecting your blind or protecting the straddle type of thing. Again, type of thing means close, but not quite. That's massively vague, really, really vague in there. And then she says what she would normally do. Normally I would just fold. That was an automatic fold. Normally I would. So she tells us what she would normally do. Now, what does it mean to do something normally? Well, it means that's what you would usually do. That's what you would do most of the time or nearly all the time. That's what normally means. But then she tells us what she does oftentimes. I do this oftentimes. Not every hand is a hand I play properly. There are often times when I'm like, oh my God, and I call. You know what I mean? The two of those, for me, don't sit comfortably side by side because normally I do this, but quite often I do something completely different. I'm not entirely sure those two concepts go together. It's not normally I do this, but occasionally I do something else. It's oftentimes, and oftentimes she says twice. So normally I do something, but often I do something that's completely the opposite of it. I'm not entirely sure that pulls together. She tells us she plays on feel. And then she says, if you look at it, I just decided for whatever reason. So whatever reason means she doesn't really know what the reason is, but then does tell us what the reason is. I just feel it. So again, two things that don't hang together, that two concepts that don't seem to coexist easily. And yeah, she surprises herself. I surprise myself at times. She's asked about the hand in question, but she says she surprises herself at times. She doesn't specifically and explicitly say she surprised herself this time. She just says, in general, I surprise myself. So although she wants us to get the impression she surprised herself in this hand, she doesn't say those words outright, so we shouldn't assume that's what she means. Also interesting is that at the very start, she said, because we were heads up, I think it is, because we were heads up, I should say, by the way, the quality of the audio in the podcast sometimes isn't great. So there's a few things, and I don't know poker terms very well, so there's a few things in here that I can't make out in the interview. I will point out when that happens. She says, because we were heads up, that was the absolute only reason. Now, I was pulled to this because she doesn't say that was the only reason, it's that was the absolute only reason. So she's saying not just the only reason, but absolute only reason. She's trying too hard for me to convince me that there was only one reason. And as you'll see, she goes down to explain another reason. So she was heads up, and that was the absolute only reason. And the word absolute just got me. Why is she using that? And then she says another reason. I just feel at the moment that I should call. So there was more than one reason. So we've got a bit of a benchmark here that she will use the word absolute in a deceptive way here, because it wasn't the absolute only reason. So just watch for the word absolute or absolutely coming up later on in the interview, because she's already used it deceptively once there. The host then says, oh, you see the flop, it's 10-10-9 with two clubs. So he flops the open-ended straight, then there's something inaudible. You, of course, have the jack of clubs. He bets 2,500 and you call, which is jack high right now. What was going through your head there? Robbie says, I'm looking at a backdoor flush via a backdoor straight draw. Now, some of her answers in this interview, in fact, apart from this question, every single one of her answers in this interview will fill up this screen with words. In fact, sometimes I've had to break the answers over several pages because there's too many words for it to appear on the one page. And this, she just answers with one line. Quite often, I'm reassured by that. If someone, there's no words like absolute in here trying too hard to convince me what was going on. So quite often that is an indicator of someone being straightforward and truthful. But I'm worried here that she's used the present tense. I'm looking at a backdoor flush. I am looking at a backdoor flush. She's remembering past events. We would expect the past tense, but she's using the present tense here. So is that what she thought at the time? Well, she doesn't say that. She says what she's thinking right now. So is she saying it in the present tense because it's something she's constructing at the time of the interview in her head? Then she's back to using a lot of words. The host says, that all seems pretty standard up to that point. And I think, I think so. And Ronnie said so as well. But gets funky on the turn. I love the poker terms. But gets funky on the turn when the 3 of hearts hits. This is when Garrett bets 10,000 and then you just min-click it back to 20,000. What's going through your head there with the raise and then just making a minimum raise? Robbie's answer is, because I thought I was sitting there with a 3, and I know that's really difficult for people that understand, and we can only get through why the story did change a little bit afterwards for very sound reasons, if I can better explain it. But for me, the Jack 3 was what I thought I was holding. I didn't know at the time, but the Jack 3 was a hand that I was holding prior to this hand. So because it kind of confused me why in my brain I thought it was holding Jack 3. The first thing she does in the first part of the answer there is front up that her story has changed. And I know a lot of people are suspicious about Robbi in this game because she's told several different versions of the story since she was accused of cheating. I'm reassured that she gets ahead of this and she brings it up herself to deal with it. That I would find that reassuring. But then she says, I will explain it, but not right now. Almost like I don't have time to explain it, but I am going to explain it better. But doesn't explain it better at the time, but does take the time to tell us that she has very sound reasons why the story has changed. That's less reassuring for me. So that's almost like I'm bringing this up so I appear honest and open and transparent, but I'm going to deal with it later on. But I do have very sound reasons. I'm not going to tell you what they are now, but I am going to tell you they are very sound reasons. Then she talks about why she thought she had Jack 3 rather than Jack 4 that she had. And she says, I didn't know at the time, but Jack 3 was a hand that I was holding prior to this hand. Well, Robbi, you did know it at the time because you had that hand. You had looked at that hand. Fair to say that you didn't remember it or you had forgotten it, but I didn't know it is interesting. That suggests that someone told her after the time that she had a Jack 3 in a previous hand, almost like someone's gone, did you think you had Jack 3 like in the previous hand? And she's gone, oh yeah, that's a great one. I'm going to run with that story. So I don't think I'm not entirely sure because she says she didn't know at the time. Yeah, I'm interested in why she used that form of words rather than, or even, I think I did have Jack 3 in a previous hand, so maybe I was getting confused with that, or I think I was getting confused with that. But she doesn't say those words. It's an interesting choice of words. And then the next line is a bit mush. So it became kind of confused to me why in my brain I thought I was holding Jack 3. There's a much straighter way of saying this entire answer. And we can all misspeak at times. This video is going to be maybe over half an hour long, so you can bet I'm going to call someone the wrong name or say something that's not quite as straightforward as it is or have to go back and correct myself. We all misspeak at times. So we're not just after catching someone out once and going, God, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. You're lying. That's not what this is about. But there is another reason why people misspeak. If I'm telling you about past events that I've experienced and I've felt what they've been like as well, the words are going to come much easier to me than if I make up a story about something that has happened that I haven't experienced, that I haven't gone through all the emotions of. If I've genuinely experienced it, the words tend to flow. I just have the words in my head that match the mental picture in my head of the things that happened and the feelings that I had. If you're making a story up, your words can become confused, cluttered, banged together a little bit like it does here. I'm not saying that's definitely what happens here, but it is one possible information as to why this is not so straightforward, is because it potentially, she could be making this up and she doesn't have the words to genuinely recall and explain what happened. She goes on to say, and when you see me look down at my hand, I mean, whenever I do look down at my hand and I'm not actually registering what the hand is, and you'll see me do this in a prior hand with Phil Ivey, where I look down at pocket aces, I know I'm holding pocket aces, like nobody ever looks at pocket aces, but I'm doing it as just a movement that becomes natural to always having a look down at your hands, so it doesn't look like you have a very strong hand like that. Interesting, she's interested in perception here. She's not saying, I did look at my hand, but I wasn't taking it in, I wasn't registering the cards there. She talks about what you see. So I think there's some image management here. You see me look down at my hand. And so this is image management. Also, there are certain things, this match was live streamed. There were people there in attendance. So there are certain inarguable things that if she is being deceptive here, she's going to have to build a story around some facts that people have witnessed, or you can witness for yourself if you watch the video of what happened. Looking at her hand is one of them. So she's getting this out because she's not asked, did you look at your hand? You looked at your hand. She brings this up herself. And it's one of the things that she can't argue. She can't say, I didn't look at my hand, because there is evidence there that she did look at her hand. So she's explaining why, if she did look at her hand. She didn't realize that she had Jack 4 and not Jack 3. And it's a really interesting description of this, because she's trying to say it's natural for her to appear like she's looking at the cards, but she isn't taking them in. But the way she explains it is just weird. I mean, look, she says in the match with Phil Ivey, I do look down at pocket aces. In the next line, she says, nobody ever looks at pocket aces. Well, again, the two things can't be true. You know, you do look at pocket aces. Nobody ever looks at pocket aces. And it's, again, ill thought through, because what she's trying to say is that when she's got a strong hand, she'll still look at it so that people don't know she's got a strong hand. She doesn't tell us what happens in a situation like she has here, where she has a less than premium hand. Does she tries to give the impression she still looks at it, but she doesn't tell us. And again, she's talking in generalities. She's telling us what she does when she's holding pocket aces. She's not telling us what happened in this particular occasion. She's talking in generalities. She's talking about normalities. But I'm starting to see a bit of a theme with her here, whereas she has some valid concepts that she puts out there. So, look, I know people saw me look at my hand, but I don't really take it in. It's just something I do. It's a natural move. I'm sort of giving the impression I'm looking at the cards, but I'm not really looking at the cards. I already know what they are in my head. But then when she starts to explain the logic inside it and give us, why she does these things, it starts to fall apart, and we start to see the contradictions in there, like nobody ever looks at pocket aces. I do look down at pocket aces. So yeah, it seems weird, but I think she gets across some sound logic, but when she explains that, almost like she's overly explaining it, instead of just giving us the concept in very brief terms. Yeah, I know I looked at my cards, but I wasn't taking them in. It's something I do all the time, so that there's no tell when I've got a strong hand that I don't look at it again. She breaks down the reasoning and thinking, and when she does that, it starts to all fall apart. But let's believe her words here for a second. When I do look down at my hand, I'm not actually registering what the hand is. She continues, and I just looked down at my hand. I also did want to take a quick glance at my jack and see if it was a club or a spade. But in my mind, I was like, I have a bluff catcher. I've got a 3 sitting behind the jack, and I'm done. And I thought that was a viable minimum raise for a 3 that hit the board on the turn. So now you do register the hand. Now you do look at the cards to see what they are, which is not what you said previously. Once again, when she starts explaining what is on the surface quite reasonable logic, she starts to contradict herself. Previously, I look at the hand and I'm not registering what's in it. Now she's saying I did look at this hand, and particularly this hand, because I wanted to examine the jack to see what suit it was. One thing I will give Robbie credit for is, so far, she has answered every question she's been asked. Deceptive people quite often will avoid the question entirely, answer a question that they haven't been asked, but Robbie does take on the question. So far, she takes on the question that she's been asked, and she doesn't deviate. She doesn't try and talk about something she'd be much happier talking about, and I will give her credit for that. So if you like this video, if you're getting something from it, press the like button. That would be great. It helps other people find the video, and obviously it makes me feel good as well if you press the like button. So thank you in advance for pressing that. Subscribe as well to the channel if you want, or get involved in the comments too. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on it. Let's move back to the interview, and the host asks, and then he jams on you for 109,000, which is your entire stack. And you pause for a little bit, and then you end up calling off. What led you to the call there? Robbie says, multiple things are happening in my brain right then. Once I was like, he absolutely doesn't have it. He wouldn't be jamming if he's sitting with, a 10 and a trip 10s, or if he's sitting with whatever, a set, if he's even sitting with top pair. I didn't see him jamming on me there. I saw him jamming with either ace high, which I was thinking because I thought it was holding the 3, or that was a very upper, like that was the best thing I was giving him right then, or a draw that was missed right after the flop. The other reason I also was like thinking he's done this to me before. with like middle to low pair. On first listen to this, I thought this was someone very analytical about the game, doing some deep thinking into what her opponent's hand could be. But then, actually, when I look at the words that she's chosen, it's quite scatty. He's sitting with whatever, a set. And then she's saying, I thought he had ace high. Why did I think he had ace high? Well, I was also thinking he's done this to me before with middle to low pair. So he's done this to you before with middle to low pair, but you think he's got ace high. Again, what appears to be some sound logic. When you actually look at the words she's used, again, it all starts to fall apart. And secondary to that as well was that, I was already $30,000. And as you'll notice, I showed up to the table with $240,000 roughly. I put 140 to the side and 100 on the table. The reason that I did that, I didn't play with my full stack at the table, is for incidences like this. If I came across an all-in situation, I'm in for $30-something thousand as it is. And how much am I going to lose? I can make this go the whole way, and I hope for the very best, I still have 140 sitting next to me, and that's the reason I divide it. Or I can just give up what's already in the pot right now. And I thought about it like I just wasn't ready to give it up for this particular hand against him. Compared to that scattiness around the cards and the possibilities and the reasoning and the rationales, she's really on the money with the money. She's very clear about how much was on the table, how much she had on the stack, how much was on the side, how much she's already in for. Very interesting that around the cards, I found vagueness and discrepancies, contradictions. On the money side of things, very, very spot on, almost photographic memory there. She continues, so there was multiple things happening here. I was playing the man because I just knew in my heart that he did not have it. I just friggin' knew it. I just knew it. And that was number one. Number two is I'm thinking, even if he does have it, I'm going to run it twice, see what happens. And I mean, how much? And I hate to say it, I know the value of $1, but I was willing to take the risk with running it twice and see what happened ultimately at the end. And just risking the rest of my money because I have that second stack sitting next to me. And let me see, I think those are the things I was ultimately thinking. I was already, something inaudible, in my brain and had a bluff catcher, and I did not think he had it. Now, this one's interesting. Have you spotted it? Here it is. 4 times she says the words, I knew. I just knew. I just knew. I just friggin' knew it. I just knew it. Knew, not thought, not strongly felt, but knew. Knew she was going to win is what she is saying here. I'm not saying this is some sort of confession, but it's a very, very interesting word choice. And I know she says once, I just knew it in my heart, but she does say, I just knew. And only at the very end, where she says, I did not think he had it. So I get the impression here, she knew she was going to win the hand somehow. She doesn't say, I felt it strongly. She doesn't say, I really believed. She doesn't say, I thought or I had a feeling. She says, I knew. Also, when we look at the money situation, she seems very cavalier. I know how much, a dollar's worth, but I'm actually was willing to risk all of it. But if you know you're going to win, how much of a risk is that? There isn't any risk there if you know you're going to win. So while what she's saying here about losing the money, and she's very over the money situation, feels cavalier, if you knew you were going to win, there's not much of a risk there. The host asks her, so at that point, you have a bluff catcher, but in your mind, are you saying you thought that you had a pair of 3s as the bluff catcher? Robbie says, yes, I thought I had. And it wasn't until actually after the fact that I was told that Jack 3 was in my hand prior, because I have to be honest with you, when I flipped those cards over, I mean, you can see the shock in my face. I'm just like, I couldn't believe. I start flustering and confusing myself and trying to come up with reasons for why I would ever make a friggin' call that terrible with a Jack 4 off. I could not even believe it. Well, this is an interesting one. She does answer the question, like I said, she has previously, with yes, I thought I had. You thought you had a pair of threes as the bluff catcher. Yes, I thought I had. And then she moves on and she doesn't deflect away to something else, but she actually moves the story on and talks about flipping the cards over, which she hasn't been asked about yet by the host, but she's determined that she's going to go on and talk about that. We've got, again, the excuse as to why she thought she had a Jack 3, that she was confusing it with a prior hand. But again, I was told that Jack 3 was in my hand higher. So again, this feels to me like someone said to her, oh, did you think you had a Jack 3 because that was in one of your prior hands? And she's gone, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I really get a feeling from the words because I was told that the Jack 3 was in my hand. Not I was reminded or I remembered, but I was told Jack 3 was in my hand prior is what she says. And she brings up once more the excuse as to why she thought she had a Jack and a 3, which is obviously very important for her, not just to say, I thought I had a Jack and a 3, but to tell us why she thought she had the Jack and the 3. She says the phrase, I have to be honest with you. Well, why suddenly does she feel the need to tell us that she's being honest? Two possibilities. She's been deceptive all the way up until now, or what's coming next isn't honest, isn't the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So she thinks that by putting I have to be honest with you in front of it, we'll believe it more, that what she's saying she's not 100% confident with because it's not the truth. And if she says, I have to be honest with you, then it strengthens it. She feels it's going to make what she has to say stronger. So let's pay attention to what it is that she mentions after she says, because I have to be honest with you. And it's talking about flipping the cards over. And she says, when I flip the cards over, you can see the shock in my face. Again, this is what you can see. This is image. This is her very aware of what we can see. You can see the shock in my face, and I couldn't believe it. I start flustering and confusing myself. I really want you to remember some things from this answer was you can see the shock in my face, and I start flustering and confusing myself. She then goes on to say, and then to be honest, like when I look over, I'm like, why am I getting defensive about it? And it was because he was glaring at me. And then I just got mad and like the fact that, and then I think possibly she says, you can't take it like a man. So I think it's maybe the fact that you can't take it like a man right now is so irritating that I just start getting defensive. Like, well, you keep letting me do this to you. Like, you look like you want to murder me, which was absolutely true. Bit out of time, this one. She tells us that she was getting defensive, therefore she was defensive, starting to get defensive. And then later on in the answer, she also says that I just start getting defensive. If we're telling a linear version of events, I wasn't defensive, I start getting defensive, I'm getting defensive, I am defensive, would be how you go from not being defensive to being defensive. But here she's getting defensive. And then later on in the answer, she starts getting defensive. So I don't think she was getting defensive. She was getting something, perhaps worried that she'd blown something or gone too far with something or made a mistake. But I'm not entirely sure she was defensive. Why? It looks like she's trying to set up a good versus bad narrative here. She was getting defensive. Why? Why do people get defensive? Because they're being picked on, because they're being accused of something, because they're being made to feel uncomfortable. And she says why she was made to feel uncomfortable. It's the look that she gets, the look that you want to murder me. And then again, she says, and if you look at the glare that he was giving me, it looked like he wanted to murder me. So strange. I don't know why he's asking me about the hand. Even Ivy pulled me aside afterwards and he said, you never, ever have to explain to anybody why you played your hand the way you did. Don't ever feel like you have to explain that. It doesn't matter. Nobody ever asks anybody else how you played the hand the way you did. Again, if you look at the glare she wants us to look, or she is aware that we look at things. She's aware of what we've seen and she wants to draw our attention to some of those things. Again, there's this thought of the good versus bad. She's been picked on and been told to explain, and someone saying to her, but you never have to explain, but she's getting the glare like someone wanted to murder me. She then goes on to say, why didn't I just ultimately right then and there say I thought I was holding Jack 3? This is a question she's asked herself, not a host question. First of all, complete embarrassment, and I was actually shocked. I don't think it had even registered with me, but I just flipped over Jack 4, but it had registered with me if you actually look it up. Let me take that back. And this is classic, that she starts off with some sound reasoning and then contradicts herself, and contradicts herself so badly here she has to correct herself. So I was actually shocked. Well, shock at what? Well, the shock would be that I thought I was going to flip over Jack 3 and it's Jack 4 that turns round. Fair enough. Embarrassment at that as well. Fair enough. And then she says, but it hadn't registered. And then she realizes how dumb that sounds, that I had embarrassment at turning over cards different from the ones I thought. I was shocked when I saw what the cards I actually had were, but it hadn't registered with me. And then, oh crap, that doesn't make any sense, does it? So I have to go back and say it had registered with me. Once again, when she over-explains her quite sound logic that she starts out with, she ends up contradicting herself. In other words, I don't believe that there's the total truth in this because of all the contradictions, because of the fact that even here, it's so bad that she has to go back and correct herself. Because I did flip over Jack 4 and it was absolutely ridiculous to me in my mind that I am now confused with myself. Somebody's asking me why I play the hand that I did and the way that I did, and I could not for the life of me believe that in 2 runouts I had won with a hand that trashy, and I ultimately felt bad about it. I was sick to my stomach that I'd won Jack 4 off with 2 runouts. It was and I think she says bomb, it was a bomb that just exploded right then and there. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't surprised with his reaction when I flipped over Jack 4. I mean, ultimately, I can see now why that would be beyond shocking to him. Like I said before, I think she's making up a story. And one of the hard things about making up a story is that, especially the one where people know parts of the story or can see parts of the story, is that you have to incorporate the things that are true, that people know, that there are witnesses to, and the deception, the storylines have to weave around that in a way that all the things that are sort of evidential, that are inarguable, that are there. And I think there's a real hard time in doing that because there's very few things that she can make up apart from what was in her mind if she wants to do that. And if you note, when these contradictory things come to play, it's all stuff that's in her mind. So again, absolutely, there's that word, absolutely, ridiculous to me in my mind. So she's really trying to confuse us. It was ridiculous in her mind, and she's now confused with herself. And she says, I'll be honest with you. Once again, she's pointing out that she has to be honest with you. And she says, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't surprised with his reaction. Well, again, let's look at what comes after I'll be honest with you and think, is it potentially deceptive? I wasn't surprised with his reaction when I flipped over Jack 4. Well, maybe she was surprised because she says, ultimately, I can see now why that would be beyond shocking to him. She doesn't say that she could see at the time it was beyond shocking to him. So yeah, that was interesting. And then there's some stuff missing here. Think about if the story went the way that she says it was. So she thought she had Jack 3. She thought that was strong. She thought she was going to win. And she flips the cards over. There would be a moment of triumphalism of here comes a strong hand, and then she looks at it. There would be the shock and panic, which sometimes she says she has, sometimes she said that she didn't have because it didn't register. But there would be some, oh my God, I've made a huge mistake. I've thought I had cards that I didn't have. Then there would be, oh Jay, I put these down and I thought this was going to be a winning hand. Now it's not a winning hand. Oh, have I just lost all the money? There would be panic. There would be disgust. There would be embarrassment of, oh no, I'm going to lose all this money. And then there would be the thinking of, wait a minute, have I won with a Jack high? There would be elation. There would be relief. Oh my God, I've made a mistake, but it still turned out all right. And she doesn't explain any of that in there. It's all about turning over the cards and it being Jack 4, that she has no emotions around worry that she'd blown it or elation when she realized that even though she'd made a mistake, everything was turning out all right. She doesn't have that in her vocabulary at all. The host asks, I know some people said that you were shocked when you turned over Jack 4. There have been others out there who have said it was your lack of being shocked that leads them to be skeptical. And that if you really thought you had Jack 3, then you table Jack 4, that you would have some sort of like, oh my God, outburst or reaction where you were much more internal about it. Robbie replies, I'm very good at internally keeping a level of shock to myself, especially if I was shocked to see it like the level of shock I guess the world needs to see. I guess ultimately I would have said it, but I was very composed in the process because I was internalizing what had just occurred and I was aware that my response would indicate that I had made a mistake and I wasn't prepared to show the whole world that I had made a mistake. Wait a minute. Previously, you said we could see the shock on your face. Now, you're saying I was composed and very good at internally keeping the level of shock to myself. You said you were aware you'd made a mistake and you weren't prepared to show the whole world the mistake. This is stone cold logic that's going down here. I was keeping the shock to myself. I was composed and I was internalizing what had occurred. And I was thinking about my response and what that would indicate to people. And then I wanted to hide it. Previously, you said you were flustered and confused. So again, we have contradictory things going on from Robbie here. On one answer, she's saying that when she turned over the cards, you could see the shock on her face and she was flustered and confused. In this one, she's saying, I'm very good at keeping shock to myself. I was composed. I was internalizing. I was thinking logically, calmly about what it was that happened. Again, two things that really have a hard time coexisting in my head. And again, she's talking quite in general terms. She's not quite always talking specifically about this hand. I'm very good at keeping a level of shock to myself. But she doesn't say, well, no, I kept this shock to myself. God, inside I was shocked and when I saw those cards, but outside I was determined people weren't going to say that. She doesn't quite say that. She gets again into the generalities of how she plays poker rather than how she played this hand, which is what she is being asked about all the time. Robbie goes on to say, I mean, ultimately, I'm sitting at a table. This is a really, really big hand. And I wasn't, for me, I was thinking internally, what the hell just happened? And people respond to different stimuli different ways. This is verbatim, by the way, so she's misspeaking here. People respond rather than people responds. But she says, and people respond to different stimuli in different ways. And for me, I couldn't believe what had happened. I wasn't prepared to share exactly how I felt about it, what something inaudible had just occurred. And again, this is at odds with what she said before. Because I couldn't believe what had just happened. This is back more maybe to the confused and flustered response rather than she does say she was thinking internally, but this is not the composed internal, I've made a mistake and I'm not willing to show the world I made a mistake. This is, again, at odds with some of the other stuff that happened. And I'm not seeing this roller coaster of emotions that should be there. Oh my God, I'm going to put down a really strong, potentially winning hand. Oh my God, no, it's not. Oh wow, what am I going to do? I've lost all the money. Oh no, I'm still fine. She doesn't discuss any of that roller coaster of emotions there at all. I will say, once we went outside with Garrett and someone else in the hallway, and we can discuss that in detail a little bit more. Once again, she has some detail that she's kicking on down the line and maybe will be discussed further on in this interview. I did walk up to him after I gave him the first batch of the chips and say, hey, I just felt like I needed a time. I was like, just would it make you feel better if I told you that I thought I was holding Jack in 3? And I thought that at that very moment, like just to kind of calm his nerves and I don't know, there was a part of me that had a little heart. I'm like, I need to like just come and like I just need to stay. I know I'm embarrassed. Confusing words there, I think. But I get the impression here that what she's talking about here, she realizes there is a big kickoff and she feels the need to maybe defuse this because previously the guy has been staring at her like she's murdered someone. And now she wants to be kind, calm his nerves, have a little heart. And she doesn't kind of explain what changed that emotion for her, that she was irritated and mad at the guy last time she was speaking. And now she wants to calm his nerves and she wants to have a little heart. So yeah, the madness, the irritated emotion has just disappeared and been replaced by something almost polar opposite. Anyway, she says that if I said I had Jack 3, would it make you feel better? And she continues, but if it's going to make him kind of understand that he handled a little better, and he looked at me, he's like, yeah, that might actually make me feel better. So I did tell him that. And when I told him that, I was like, right, I'm going to go on camera now and I'm going to tell the same thing because that's actually the truth. And I didn't do it at the table. I don't know why it's difficult to understand that I didn't do it at the table. That was an immediate response. I'm in a high pressure situation. I'm shocked myself. So she's back to being shocked. You have to understand this isn't something, excuse me, this isn't something I was preparing to respond to. And it was just the whole thing was super awkward. And more than anything, I can't believe I won a hand that shitty on 2 runouts. I mean, I was like, if anything, given 50% of it, I mean, well, what we got here then? Something odd here. The previous bit, she said, if I told you that I thought I had Jack in 3, would it make you feel better? And he says, yeah, that might actually make me feel a bit better. So I did tell him that. We kind of already told him that. And, like, why is the conversation not, oh, I'm really sorry, or I don't understand why you're so mad about it, or I do understand why you're so mad about it. Look, I thought I had Jack 3. I thought I had a stronger hand than I did, which is why I bet the way I did, which is why I played the way I did. I still ended up winning with Jack high. But, maybe if you feel like you can't read me or so on, it's because you were reading or trying to read something that wasn't there. I thought I had different hands. Not, would it make you feel better if I said this? Yes, it would make me feel better. So I said it. People just don't talk like that or even really act like that. And then she says, then I'm going to go on camera and say the same thing because it's the truth. No one honest talks like that. No one would have to explain, I'm going to say this because it's the truth. There's a really easy way to say that. You said, so I told him that backstage or wherever it was that this happened, and then I went on camera and said the same thing, or told everyone else. Not, I said that because it's the truth. Nah, I'm not buying this whatsoever. Also, interesting choice of words in this isn't something I was preparing to respond to. That's interesting. What were you preparing to respond to? It suggests there were things you were preparing to respond to, but him throwing murderous glances at you and getting really annoyed with what had happened wasn't something that you thought you'd have to deal with. But did you think you'd have to deal with some other stuff? It's an interesting word choice. What was she preparing to respond to if it wasn't that? Are you ready for the big one then? The host goes for it. I want to just ask bluntly, if you will, because I know a lot of people are out there thinking that you did. Did you cheat? Did you do anything wrong? Any malicious intent in that game? And Robbie's reply, no. I absolutely, unequivocally did not cheat. And the one thing, and I have said this before, the one thing I regret is I wish that I wish at that very moment, and I understand why not, but I did say to Nick and I said, can you stop? Can you just go out there and get my bag and get everything and just go through everything? I wish you could have all just, I wish you could have all just stripped down naked, given all of our shit, including my jewelry. You know, I'm wearing the ring that was in question, and just happens to something inaudible out there with everything that we have, because I think that would have really solved a lot of problems. But of course, that would have been a very accusatory request, and he didn't, I didn't, I think none of us thought that it would reach to the depths that it's reached right now. So, the big question is out there, did you cheat? And the first thing she says is no. That's good. Yeah. So if she hadn't said no very early on in the answer to that, I'd be going, why has she not done that? It's a yes or no question. Did you cheat? Yes, I did. Did you cheat? No, I didn't. The rest of it, though, I'm not so reassured or convinced by. No, I absolutely, there's that word again, absolutely, unequivocally did not cheat. Why do you need to put two words in there to say, to persuade us even more or convince us even more that you did not cheat? Why not just say, no, I did not cheat. No, I played fair and square. Why are these words in there to really convince us? And then everything after that is mush. It's a very weird scenario, you know, like it's something I don't really think would happen. I can't make out, you know, like what she really thinks would happen there. You know, I mean, it really wouldn't happen. People would not be stripped down naked. People would not be going through everything. And notice that she says, I wish you could have all just stripped down naked. She doesn't include herself in that. You all is everyone else apart from her. I wish you could have all just stripped down naked. And at the very end, she says, if all that had happened, this really weird thing of going through everything, jewelry, naked people, and so on, she says that I think that would really have solved a lot of problems. Not, I think that would have proved that I did not cheat, or that would have shown that I did not cheat. It just would have solved a lot of problems. Interesting word choice. Okay, conclusions time. I think she's being deceptive. I especially don't buy that she didn't know what cards she had. She draws her attention to the reasons for it too often. She's just explaining that too hard, too much. At times, she does seem to want to give us the impression she's scatterbrained. She doesn't play properly. Oftentimes, she was confused. She was flustered. Cards don't register with us. She didn't remember her cards. Then on the money thing, she was on the button, pinpoint on knowing exactly how much money was there. I saw very little, though. So if I think she's been deceptive, I don't think at all she played the hand the way she thought she did. I think she always knew she had Jack 4 and not Jack 3. I saw very little in her words to say that she cheated, that I got the impression, you know, like there was cheating going on. I didn't pick that up in her words. That was right up until she's asked whether she cheated, and then her reply to that isn't very convincing to me at all. I mean, ultimately, we have a deceitful person in there. She contradicts her own things that she says time and time again, and she seems to have quite a sound story to tell, but she overly explains it, and when she overly explains it, that's when the holes start to appear. She starts contradicting herself. I look at cards and don't take them in. Oh, but I look at cards and do take them in. I was shocked. I wasn't shocked. You could see the shock. There was no shock on my face, I know, because I was internalizing it all. Now, she's quite hard to read, Robbie, in terms of, people who are innocent and accused of cheating, or people who are guilty and accused of cheating. Many of the things they're going to say are going to be similar, but there's more holes in what she says. There's the missing bits as well. She doesn't talk about that roller coaster of emotions that I would expect to hear around thinking I've screwed up. Oh no, I've actually done all right, even though I screwed up. Like, man, the relief and the elation there. She doesn't mention any of that. And there's that repetition of I just knew I was going to win, which I think is very interesting that she says that so many times together. So from that and from the things missing, I do think that Robbie somehow, before she played the cards, she knew she had won. She had a winning hand. Not that she guessed that she had a winning hand, not she felt strongly she had a winning hand or believed she had a winning hand. None of those things. I think she knew that she had a winning hand. And is there any way of knowing in poker you have a winning hand without cheating? Answers in the comments, please. If you enjoyed that, neveratruerword.com is the website where you'll find more articles like this. Look at the words that people use and see if we can find out truth, deception behind them. The link tree, the address is on the screen there. It's also in the description below is where you can find me on social media if you want to connect and have any conversations, especially around what words should we look at next. Maybe there's someone else involved in this poker game or this poker setup who's got some words you would like to have a look at, or maybe it's something completely unrelated. You can drop some suggestions in the comments on this video or on social media. Get in touch there. If you like this, you might like the Words of West Cork podcast. There's links to it in the description as well. It deals with an unsolved murder from 1990s Ireland and looks at the words people used at the heart of the investigation to find out if we can find out a little bit more around the murder of a woman in Ireland in the 1990s. And if you want to learn for yourself ways that you can uncover deception in the words that people use, there are a couple of books available. You may want to use them with friends, family, work colleagues, maybe relationships, dating, whatever it is. Or you may want to use it in situations like this where someone is in the news and using words and you want to be able to work out if they are being truthful or they are being deceptive. The links to those are in the descriptions below. And there's more videos on this channel as well. Have a look at some of them. You may well find some to your liking. And we will see you for another video soon with Never a Truer Word.